Hey everyone, I'm Nicole with Dennis's 7 Dees. Thanks for tuning in today. We are getting a little creative this morning. What we're doing today is making living arrangements, you could say, or creating arrangements with our indoor plants. It's pretty common that we teach classes and talk about combinations for container gardening for outdoors, but other than like talking about sedum dish gardens or using like cactus and succulents planted together, we don't often discuss grouping our houseplants together in these types of arrangements or displays. But once you have a handful of houseplants, you start to think, well, gosh, they look really good together. When I water sometimes and I put them all together in a big tray, I think, wow, what a pretty assortment that makes. So what we're doing essentially is creating that same pleasing decoration or arrangement in a container or a vessel, or here I have mostly nursery pots, but you can really kind of think beyond the pot and go to serving trays or bowls, baskets, like an old metal toolbox or an ice bucket or something like that. So ideally, the wider the opening of your container, the better, so that you can put more plants in together. But I've got here, for example, like a kind of a repurposed wood box that we are using that kind of tones of the wood, this beachy gray that we see, to then echo the plants that we're putting inside of it to complement. And so we've got a Bontel Silver Sansevieria. We have the variegated string of turtles, also known as Ceropigia. And then we've got, let me put it down. Then we've got just our little Cibo Blues coming out as trailing accents. And this arrangement here is a good example of the real traditional, what we've taught you forever, concepts of thriller, filler, or sort of a spiller as well. So filler and spiller. So we use plants that grow in different directions and habits to be able to put more plants into a space without them all crowding each other. So another fun example of a finished arrangement is over here in this glazed white ceramic bowl. So more of a traditional container, but again, one of those pots that is a little bit less likely to be used with standard houseplants just because it's low and wide. More of a suitable dish garden or collected arrangement container. So here we've got kind of playing off of different leaf colors and styles. The arrangement here has a Monstera Adensonia. We've got the Song of India, Dracaena, and then we've got a lovely little Syngonium here that's sort of spilling over the edge. And then you can see on this arrangement that we've hilled up some green moss to just cover up the planting and kind of the mechanics of the planting itself, since a few of these pots are taller than the container that we're using. And I'll kind of give you a peek inside here so you can see what I mean. If we start to dissect this container, we see that there is actually a layer of sheet moss, and we'll look at all this material. So sheet moss is wrapped around the plastic pot, and then in the very center you actually see that there's a orange plastic pot that's been concealed by that lovely moss. We fold that moss back over, kind of tuck in and hide our seams, and it looks like that lovely finished planting. We've got just kind of fun focal piece here, so a little centerpiece of wood that echoes the holes in the leaves here of the Adansonii. So that's kind of a fun just play on design. Otherwise, something very temporary in the sense that we're not going to leave these plants all potted together in that arrangement forever. It's a great decoration. It highlights the plants that are just looking really great in your collection right now. You're like, man, these all look good together. Pull them together and, you know, just celebrate a pretty arrangement. It's like cutting flowers and bringing cut flowers into your home. You're making an arrangement that is meant to be temporary. Now, other collections of plants could be more intended to be long-term, you know, grown long-term. But we have to take into consideration in long-term growth that they are compatible in their light, especially, so that where they sit, they're getting the type of lighting that they need and no plants are struggling, but also that they're compatible in, you know, moisture needs, or at least in like checkup periods, you know. So you don't want a plant that needs to be looked in on every 3 days next to a plant that, you know, doesn't need to be watered for a month. That just makes your arrangement sort of mismatched or hard to maintain. It's also possible that in these types of arrangements, for example, again, bringing this guy up, should one plant start to struggle, it could be removed from the arrangement easily because they're not even planted in here and replaced with another plant that maybe looks as good or better in its place. So those arrangements and their temporary nature allows us to sort of play with and shuffle around our plants at the same time. Now, you're going to have to, if they're in there for a long time, you're going to have to water them to maintain them. That means, again, it's just as easy as it was to put them together as it is to take them apart. In the arrangement I was just showing, we'll take the moss back and most likely take the plant out of this container, water it, put it back in, and, you know, once it's drip dry and drained, so that it doesn't sit in the pot and maybe drip water down onto our furniture or the table that we have it displayed on, or that kind of thing. But no matter what, it's a good idea to have some sort of protective layer between your container and the furniture or surface that you're displaying it on, whether it's on the floor, on your kitchen counter, on your dining room table or sideboard. Even though you may intend to take them out to water them and put them back in, just moisture and condensation could form at the bottom of your containers. So we sell these really great plant protector things that are like coasters. They're like coasters for plants. So we have kind of felty ones, or wool felty ones. We have corky ones, just like cork coasters that you have for your drinks and things. And again, they're a lower profile. They look a little bit better than like a plastic saucer would, but they're gonna keep your surface protected, which is exactly what they're meant for. So mechanics of course, maintenance, watering, how these things are all put together, that is what we're going to go into at this point. And what I did this morning as I started to assemble like ingredients, you know, I mean, I started to pull plants together that I thought were attractive in their little groups. Maybe trying to trying to also coordinate them with the container that they're in, for example. So this beautiful tricolor ficus, I wanted to kind of show off that dark stem it has with the dark container, as well as just kind of the drama of the dark contrast with those bright variegated leaves that our little ficus has. This is Ficus Triangularis variegatus, kind of a fun collector plant that we want to feature. And then it's actually sitting in with a Syngonium called Frosted Heart. So as the Syngonium gets a little bit bigger, you see it's got these beautiful white stems. So we're running with that white contrast. And again, like I also mentioned, the dark stems of the Triangularis going with the black pot for that reason. Same over here. I just kind of put it together, but we can pull it all apart. I've got another Cebu blue coming out the front, so giving us a nice trailing accent. We've got a Calathea. This is the I can't even say it. And then another Syngonium. So you can see that they're all just kind of stuffed into the basket right now, but we're going to put them together in a little bit more finished look here in a minute. I showed you my wood box with the kind of just gray, silver and gray tones. So kind of a fun collection there. Oops, I don't want to pinch anybody. This great galvanized container is just kind of modern and sleek looking, which is a fun contrast again to this lovely spotted begonia. And then we've got another Calathea behind it that just kind of emphasizes again the backside of the Calathea, shows those beautiful burgundy leaves as well as the burgundy undersides of the begonia. So just simple on this one. We've got a lot of texture on the galvanized container itself, kind of echoes the silver spots as well. So playing with color on this kind of simple theme. This is a cool container that it's ceramic, it's kind of heavy duty, even almost terracotta, so kind of one that might belong more outside, but we can really make it look fashionable and stylish with the plants that I've put in here. We've got a Staghorn Fern that's going to give us that sort of spill over the edge. We've got the Raven ZZs, these gorgeous shiny black Raven ZZ plants, and then this gorgeous begonia in the back. This is Berkelii begonia that just is, the leaves are just stunning. And they sort of, they sort of shimmer in the light. So we'll play with that silvery shimmer that they have against that silvery shimmer and the texture that we have on the Staghorn Fern. This, let's see here, make it easier for me because I'm not going to lift this guy up. I've got an urn here. You can see kind of just like a fun-footed urn. Classic white urn that's tall. So what we've had to do is build up a little bit of a false in the urn so that we could put in a fern in the urn, because what else would you put, right? So you put a fern in your urn, and then I've just complemented it with this, again, amazing leaf of a Xanthosoma. So this is Xanthosoma Lindenii, which just gives us that, again, white contrast with the pot. The blue-gray of the leaves complement that blue-gray fern. It would be nice maybe to have something spilling over, and if so, I'd do another one of these. Of course I would do another one of these Cebu blues. I think that would be gorgeous in there as well, but it could kind of get lost. So things you have to think about when you're putting it all together. Just like doing an outfit, you like put it all together, take a look at it, take something out, maybe replace it, keep playing. And then lastly, I've got kind of this wild container that includes these Alocasia Red Secrets. That's this amazing, like, alien looking foliage here. So another black raven ZZ plant in the back, and then a super cool Hoya. This is Hoya australis tricolor in front, giving us a little bit of a contrast to show off the darkness. Otherwise it would all just be really dark. And then sort of a coppery center of that Hoya new growth that pulls the colors together of the pot that we use too. So now that you see kind of the outfits, and the assembly, the insides of it, the secrets of how things are put together. It's not really secret, but as I always mention, there's a handout that goes along with this class today. The handout is linked, is a link that you'll find right underneath the title of this video. So if you have any trouble finding the handout, just mention it in a comment and we'll link it directly to you. But the insides of some of these containers occasionally need to have some filler, something to build up the height in the bottom so that you have a false bottom to bring the level up for your containers. Stabilizing kind of material that help to keep plants from possibly, going tipsy-turvy or not staying upright. You may need a plastic liner, for example, for something like your wood box or our lovely basket, anything that's got natural material. We might see, mildew. Again, we talked about condensation, so we just want to be a little bit more aware of that, especially if it's like our heirloom, basket or some very valued possession. And then I use things like recycled, repurposed Tupperware. So cottage cheese containers, turn them upside down. That gives you a nice bottom. Empty plant containers, turn them upside down or on their sides to use them for height and kind of filler. You're not going to see any of this material, so you can go ahead and kind of use what you've got around to build up and accommodate the space. Then the finishing layer is chosen to kind of either complement or contrast even your planting itself, but usually complementary. We've got lots of moss options, including the more kind of silver gray and really stringy Spanish moss. We've got what we call sheet moss, which you can see is literally in a thin sheet. That's great for like covering pots and concealing things. And then today I just also brought just kind of clumps of this bright chartreuse reindeer moss. So this is preserved and color fast but soft from glycerin preservation, and easy again to kind of wedge into spaces to conceal and accent your plantings. So let's start with something simple, right? So we've got this fun, let me move this guy out of the way. Little table rearrangement here. So something simple here. We've got this, as I mentioned, shallow black container. This could be, it's pretty low. So this could even be like a table centerpiece. For example, it is, it has a hole in the bottom because this is a kind of a standard nursery pot or, plant container. So we would, as I mentioned, want to put a surface protector on the bottom. I even just kind of for kicks, I have it on just an upturned plastic tray, which gives it a little bit of a lift. And then because all of our plants that we're using are 4-inch pots, little frosted hearts, I have 3 of those. Beautiful Syngoniums. And then a 4-inch pot of the Ficus tricolor. These are the same depth as the bowl that we're planting into or the container that we're using. So that's convenient because we don't have to build up any kind of false bottom. But they don't all fill the container. In fact, there's some space in between that I could use an empty 4-inch pot, for example, just to push them out towards the edge. And that keeps keeps kind of that space open in the middle. I don't have to use quite as much filler material, for example, so I can just put my moss over top of that center piece. And I'm going to use, I mean, we could use anything. We could use the chartreuse, but I think that's too much. I like the idea of the Spanish moss because I think it gives us a nice texture and contrast. However, I also think that the green moss would be really attractive. So we're going to start and just kind of work with the green moss right now to hide. Oh, actually, I need to use some regular moss. Regular moss is just known as sphagnum moss. It comes in bags, and it's really just like brown and fun for packing in and building up even a base and then putting your prettier moss on top. So we'll just grab some clumps of this and just stuff it into the base. And again, that holds the plants up and gives me something for the more attractive moss to set on, so I'm not using quite as much. Then we get our little sheet moss. Now you can tear the sheet moss so we can make it into whatever size works for our project. And that's going to help us, again, conceal. Just lift up your leaves, tuck it in there. Same on this side. We'll start to tear this up a little bit. Get a bigger piece where we need more concealment all the way around. I'll work here. And lots of sheet moss. Get that in there. And then into the center here, I'm actually going to put a little piece of moss, just for fun, for a little close inspection. A pretty little crystal. Yeah. So we could use a little bit more moss to fill in, but again, this gives you the idea on camera of how to finish that off with the sheet moss to cover and hide those containers. You can, of course, neaten it up a little bit as you take more time for your own individual projects. But this is kind of how you would do it in a space that you didn't need to lift up or make any special arrangements for the plants because they're all at the right height in the first place. I'm going to disassemble a little bit so I can show off the same, use the same materials. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. Now in our basket, here in our basket, because a basket's got a little bit of flex to it, I've crammed some of the plants in. So we've got disassembly of some kind of squishing in and squishing back out. Let's see, maybe I could take this guy out first. Make sure you can get him out, of course. So here's the inside of the basket, and it's unlined. So we're going to go ahead and use whatever we have, right? So I just had this bubble wrap. I'm going to just fold it up so that it's got some nice overlap in there, and now it's covering enough of the basket that I'm not worried I'm gonna harm it with moisture. Then we're gonna use our plastic 4-inch pots to build up a little false bottom. So here we see kind of what that looks like inside. And I'm going to work with the biggest pot. So starting with the largest container and getting that in as our kind of front spiller. This is sort of a square basket. So I suppose I'm going to focus it on the, on the front plane or on the square plane. So I'm going to put the Pothos Cibo Blue right in. You can see that's towards the front center and just below the edge of the pot or basket. And now I love the way that the pattern on this Calathea echoes the pattern on the basket. Look how cool that is. So again, why you choose a pot or a container or a plant to go in it. It could be for reasons all to yourself or because clearly it looks great together. But sometimes it's just obvious. When you start pulling things together, you look around your house and you're like, never even noticed how those two plants, the plant and pot, look great together. So serendipity, let's, sometimes let creativity do the talking. So here's Cibo Blue. We've got some space behind it for the Calathea. I'm going to tuck that tag down a little bit. Now it's a little bit mushy or smushy, so we could just cram it back in there. But what we can also do, and you'll see this in your handout, because we're talking about temporary containment in the first place, we're going to just wrap this up in some moss. So we've taken it, the root ball's a little bit easier to manipulate than this pot is, and it already is a little bit smaller and easier to squish in there. So I'm gonna just put a little, this is the brown moss. I'm gonna put a little bit of moss just down underneath it, just to give it something to sit on. And then in a bucket here, I've got wet moss. So now I'm gonna grab some of my wet moss. And this is damp, right? So here, there, water out of the moss, but not like dripping, okay? I'm gonna just get enough. You can do this in your hands, you can do it on the table. Just gonna get enough to wrap around these lovely roots of the Calathea to keep it moist and protected. Okay, so now finishing this off for reals, as I would say if I were 5. Oops. I would wrap this, just wrap it up with twine. Just wrap the moss up with twine so that now you've got this lovely little kind of smushable root ball. And then we're gonna smoosh it right in. Of course, you got to turn it the right way or whatever, so pay attention to that as you're smooshing. I think that's pretty good. And then with our Syngonium, I think we're going to need to do the same thing. So take the Syngonium out of its pot. Of course, I didn't get enough moss wet, so I'm going to wrap it in dry moss, but you get the picture. the water out. Doesn't have to be soaking wet. Cover all the roots up so that at least it has the ability to stay moist and doesn't just, lose moisture exposed to the air. And then we're gonna focus better this time on the angle as we smoosh it in. So here we go. Oh, let me kind of write it. Okay, now because we've used the moss, we don't have to use quite as much moss in the finishing of this arrangement, but we could go back to the decorative sheet moss and just tuck it to just to finish. Oop. The look. So you're peeking on green everywhere, I suppose, is nice. Just tuck it. One more back here. Okay, there's my final chunk. Ta-da! Oh, ta-da! So again, tuck your little edges in so that you don't have loose moss fringe, I suppose. Lots of finessing that could be done at home, but we've lined the basket with plastic. We've used some props on the bottom to boost up some of our plants, and we've got the ability to kind of cram a few more plants together because of the fact that we have removed them from their containers and then put them into moss instead. Now you could do something similar here. Wow, I'm making a mess. Here is my, I'll set you over here. Here's my little box, my kind of driftwood box, which I love these boxes. They're fantastic. I mean, sometimes you just use stuff like this to like catch crap on your sideboard or whatever, and then one day you look at it and you're like, dump those pennies and screws out of that thing. It's time to use it for a pretty display. So here we disassemble real quick. Oh, this is not Bontel. This is Sayuri, Sansevieria Sayuri. Very exciting. More Cebu blue. Just the color is great on the Cebu blue. You can see we already have a liner here. So this box comes with its own plastic liner. How cool is that? No drain holes on the bottom, so we don't have to worry quite as much about surface protection, which is good because we don't have rectangular coasters. I suppose a couple of round coasters underneath this would at least protect your surface, but we shouldn't have to worry so much because it's already lined and everything. And then starting with our biggest plant, so our Sansevieria here is gonna fit really pretty squarely into the container. It fills up the width of it most of the way. It sits a little low, but I'm actually okay with that, so I'm gonna let it sit a little low. And I think that it's got a good angle from the front here, but it's hard for me to tell because I'm backwards. But sitting here with the centerpiece kind of established, I've got my next group of plants. I'm going to do the Cebu blues as the kind of trailing spillers, but they are too short to really sit in this container. So see, if I drop them onto the ground, onto the floor of the container, they are going to sit too low and be sort of buried underneath. So I want to boost them, and I'm going to try my little plastic nursery pot because they're easy and convenient, but it might be too high. It is kind of too high because Yeah, it's too high unless I bring this guy up, but honestly, I just think it's too high. So instead of using our plastic pots, we're gonna just use wads of the brown moss. You could use styrofoam. You could use like packing material, packing peanuts, you know, that kind of thing. I'm just gonna wad up a little bit of moss to give it enough height to sit properly in there. Moss is so nice because, of course, you can compress it a little bit, so I can play with the height there. So another nice wad of moss on the other side. In you go. Just fits perfectly now into the corners. See if I can lift and show you. So again, much better height and level for the containers. And now we could pull it back, pull these back a little if we wanted to be a little bit more like three-dimensional instead of just the front. So again, kind of up to you. But this little Cirripegia, again, variegated string of hearts. Did I say string of turtles? I want this to kind of be in the very front as a little pizzazz. And so there's no, I can't, it's not gonna do that right now. But because this is an easy kind of a succulent type plant, not gonna have to water it very frequently. I'm gonna go ahead again and remove it from its container. And in this case, instead of wrapping it in moss, which might keep it too wet, right, because it's more of a succulent, I just have these, like, whatever bags you have. Again, we're repurposing things for sure, but I'm gonna put it into just a plastic bag. Just happens to be the perfect size for this. I'll get it down to the bottom and just roll it down so that your root ball is in plastic, and we can conceal that though under moss. And now you can see why I wanted to leave sort of an opening here. We're gonna set our Cirripegia in. We'll fan it out a little bit. Then I think this is the box that we're definitely going to use the Spanish moss in. So pulling apart kind of clumps to work with, and then just stuffing them in. In this case, I'm going to fluff it up a little bit around my centerpiece there because I want to hide that plastic for sure. More here on the edges. Oops. Kind of fell backwards. Okay, so again, I would take a little bit more time to finesse, but this is really, again, using that kind of silver tones instead of the greens, playing off of the box itself to sort of set the tone, and then going all in with the grays of silver grays of the Spanish moss to really show off the whole arrangement. Now, similar idea with this lovely kind of, again, heavier ceramic arrangement. This pot is a little bit higher in the back than it is in the front, so it has like a ready angle. And so this would be fun to remove the staghorn from its pot so that it could lay a little bit easier onto the container. So wrapping this up in moss, again, now that I've shown you how to do that, wrapping the root ball, kind of like kokedama. If you've ever done your kokedama, this would be a lot like doing kokedama, although you don't have to finish it off quite so perfectly since it's going to be concealed. So then out of the pot, it just lays a little bit better against the sides of the container. We'll groom it a little bit. We can always use the brown moss to kind of give it, again, that little prop that it needed. Same with this begonia. Nope, too tall. I'm going to use more as the sphagnum. Some height. This one we're going to just play simple because our plants are so dramatic. The Raven ZZs, really showing off the pattern on the begonia foliage. Get that all arranged. And then again using, I don't know, I think that's too much. Green moss or Spanish, let's see. Let's see which one we like the look of. Spanish is nice, yeah? Let's see. Yeah, it's a fun contrast against the Raven ZZ. I'll just work it in all of your kind of gaps, hiding all of the mechanics of things. Now remember, when you use moss as a mulch or a cover layer like this, it also holds a little bit more moisture in for your plants. So something like our ZZ already doesn't need to be watered very frequently, but it's going to be need to be watered even less frequently once it's had this kind of moss mulch layer. So be aware of that and don't end up overwatering on accident. See how we just hide everything? Moss makes everything better. And then we finish. Now again, once I've put it all together, I'm not 100% sure that I like the look of the Spanish moss with this. It might just be, it might look better with a cleaner, whoop. See, the difference might be better with the more finished look of green moss instead. So you can just play with your materials. I think it's really fun, you know, like if you're crafting, you're always like, well, how about this? How about this? So same with crafting with your indoor plants, is just making those beautiful arrangements and kind of looking for that right finishing touch to not detract, but to really, you know, just like I said, be a finishing touch. I'm not going to go into the rest of the designs because I think that you understand, again, the idea of what we're doing. Little mister bottles are great for maintaining just humidity levels and kind of getting the plants to stay hydrated between waterings, if that's the case, especially if they're in a high you know, dry area or a space where they're getting, you know, bright light and they didn't used to, or something like that. So again, paying attention to their health while they're in their containers, but you could always reach in, take individual plants out, water them, care for them, and then put them back as needed. We'll just put this guy back as it needed. And I did bring in, you know, like a pretty crystal. We've got, you know, if you've got seashell collections or a cool piece of driftwood or a neat rock that you picked up, that's another really fun item to kind of, you know, put into the center of your arrangement. Or here with our Ceropigia, it kind of echoes the, oops, don't lose your crystal in the moss. This is a pretty little purple color that just reiterates our variegated string of hearts, so that's kind of fun in there. So again, playing with some other mixed materials to add to your container or giving it a focal point is also, you know, encouraged and lots of fun. If you are inspired today and you put something together, I would love to see a picture of it. If you are courageous enough to share it on social media, we would all enjoy watching to see what everyone does. So as usual, I hope you have enjoyed watching, and thanks for everything. Happy gardening all.